In this video, I'm going to tell you why I chose the Canon R8 and the Canon 24-240 Superzoom as my main stock photography and videography setup. I've been doing photography as a side hustle for the last 15 years, and 10 of those years were as a stock photographer. I'm an Australian photographer based in The Hague in the Netherlands. And before I was doing stock photography, I was an editorial magazine photojournalist. So I'd go out, find stories, photograph, and also write the stories myself. Sometimes I couldn't be bothered writing the story, and that's how I gradually merged more into stock photography, because it was, for me, a lot more enjoyable and faster and easier just to take the photos, upload them to the stock agencies, and then the rest takes care of itself. In the past, I've been using crop sensor Canon cameras. I started out with a Canon 60D. Before that, I was using little point and shoots before the DSLRs were really mainstream and affordable. From the 60D, I moved on to a Canon 70D. And primarily I was using the Sigma lenses, and my standard Sigma zoom was a 17 to 50 millimeter f2.8 Sigma zoom. And for my long shots, I used a Sigma image stabilized f2.8 70 to 200 millimeter. I also am a nature and wildlife enthusiast photographer. So for that, I still use the Canon 400mm prime L lens, and that's a fixed f.56 aperture, non-image stabilized. I noticed a few years ago with my stock photography that my kit was very old and it didn't suit the hybrid way I was shooting. I needed a camera that I could easily switch from photos to videos. So I needed a camera and lens that pretty much did everything for the minimum cost, but the maximum quality that I could get for my money. So what I did was I did a test on the Canon Superzoom, the 24-240mm RF lens, and I tested that with a budget Canon body. It was a full frame RP body, the cheapest full frame in Canon lineup. And I was so satisfied with that combination, except for the fact that the RP was not a very strong video camera. So I waited and saved my money for another couple of years. When I saw that the R8 was out and its specs said it did 60 frames per second at 4K, and it used the same camera sensor as the Canon R6 Mark II, I pretty much made a decision straight away to buy it. So I purchased the Canon R8 from MPB, and this is it here. And with the Canon R8, I purchased the Canon 24-240mm lens as my primary stock photography combination for video and photos. So we'll start off with the lens. It's an image stabilized variable aperture lens. I'm not a very technical person, so if I get the specs wrong, feel free to write a comment and tell me where I went wrong. The base aperture at the widest part of this lens at 24mm is, I think, f4. And then when you wind her out to 240mm, it goes up to 6.3 as the minimum or maximum widest aperture you can use. It's got an image stabilization, which is very good for the R8 because the R8 only has electronic stabilization. So how have I been using this lens? Pretty much I've been using it constantly for the last year and a half, and I carry it with me virtually everywhere I go when I go out of the house. If my family and I are going for a walk in the park, or we're going for a day trip. The beauty of this setup, the R8 is so compact that it kind of compensates for the big lump of a lens on the end of it. And it's such an easy combination to use. What I do is I just whack it in this old Sigma bag that I've been using for about 20 years. And I just sling it over my shoulder and I'm good to go. In the past, when I had my Sigma lens set up, if I wanted to cover the distances of 24mm or 17mm to 200mm, I'd have to use this bag and this heavy 200mm f2.8, which weighs at least a kilo, and I'd have to lug this over my shoulder everywhere I go, which was getting pretty old. When you compare it to just this setup, it's so easy. Half the time you forget you've even got the camera on your back. So I was in Hungary recently, Budapest, the city, and I took the camera with me. We were there for a family holiday, and I just carried the combination with me everywhere. And primarily I was doing a lot of editorial stock photography and video work. I went out onto the Margaret Bridge, which connects to a nature island called Margaret Island, and that gave great views of the city. So its elevated position kind of gave it a simulated drone shot style look. So I took a lot of stills, I used the zoom lens, which was perfect, and I also did a lot of panning shots of the river bank, and the architecture of the buildings next to the river. And the image stabilization on the Superzoom worked really well for those panning shots. So the combination of the lens stabilization and the software stabilization in the video editing suite make it very easy to capture fast handheld footage. I was also in London, and that's where this kit came in handy. I was admittedly in a very good area of London around Kensington and Chelsea, which is probably the most expensive real estate in some parts of Europe, but I didn't feel like my gear was at risk. And if I was in the subway or walking on the streets at night, I just had my bag in front of me, and a hand resting on my bag, so if someone did ride past on one of those fat bikes and try and rip it off my shoulder, then they probably would have come off their bike instead of this coming off my shoulder. But in London, I was able to get, with the 24mm, relatively good wide angle shots of the city. And I was also able to zoom in and just pick details out of the cityscape that I was in. Same situation for video. I was getting a lot of grab shots of London black cabs. I also sat in the front seat of a double-decker bus and just handheld as the bus moved through London, and I just videoed the journey. I've also been taking this to the airport at Schiphol Airport near Haarlem or Amsterdam, and the flexibility of the lens allows me to get the aircraft, photograph the aircraft as they're coming into land from quite a distance, and as they get closer to me I can make the lens wider and wider and wider until the aircraft goes straight past me and I can still get it all in frame. Handheld once again, with the addition of some stabilization in DaVinci Resolve, worked perfectly. And the variable aperture is not really a factor. These lenses are f2.8, but the sensor on the Canon R8 is so effective, I've found, with low light subjects that even if I use a fairly narrow aperture like f6.3 and a fast shutter speed, the sensor can handle that low light without any real noise reduction in Lightroom up until about 6,400, depending on the scene, of course. Some scenes show more visible noise than others. And then above 6,400, you can use Lightroom to reduce the noise. And then after that, if you're really desperate, you can use the AI noise reduction in Lightroom. So we'll get on to the R8 now. The R8 is a very compact full frame camera. It has a couple of disadvantages compared to the other models such as the R6, which cost I think about €1,000 more. One of those disadvantages is it only has a small battery. So for that reason I've purchased 3 Canon batteries, and I think, can't remember exactly how much they cost, but they're not as expensive as the LP6 type batteries. I purchased 3 batteries because sometimes I do event work and I've been using the Canon R8 as a B camera. In the latest event, I decided wrongly, if you're ever doing a paid event, do not follow my example. Normally for an event I would rent a Canon R6 Mark II, which has the big LPE6 batteries, and 2 memory cards, 2 SD cards. And I photograph directly onto one card and save those files, I think in JPEG, on the second card, and also video. The last time I did an event, I didn't want to spend the extra money and pay for the Canon R6, so I just went with the Canon R8, and I do not recommend that because of the single memory card that the Canon R8 has. So it only has one SD card slot, and if that fails, then you have a very disappointed client and a lot of stress. But I took the chance because I've used the Canon R8 and I know it has been reliable for the year that I've had it. So I was going to take the R8. I did rent a Canon 24-240mm f2.8 RF image stabilized lens for the wide to medium angle and for the f2.8 aperture. And I had my adapter from my EF lens to the RF body for this Sigma 70-200 lens. So I was ready to go, and when I got to the location, I realized I had left my adapter on my wildlife lens, so I was unable to use my 70-200 f2.8. So for the long shots, I was stuck with the Canon 24-240mm, and on the long end it's, I think, around 6.3 aperture, so in low light that is not ideal. I didn't have a choice, so I took photos on the long side with this, and with a lot of creative work with Lightroom noise reduction, I was able to save most of the images and the video from the 24-240 lens. Another disadvantage of the Canon 24-240 lens is that it doesn't do macro. So when I am taking photos of, say, studio shots with my little mini light box setup, and I want to get closer and get more detailed shots, the lens does not focus close up like my old Sigma 17-50mm used to. So I was able to get semi-macro shots with that. But with this Superzoom, it's not flexible enough for the close-up shots. So who is this lens and camera for? I think I can only relate to my own circumstances. So this camera, I think, is for someone who needs excellent quality video and also excellent quality photos when they're photographing in kind of extreme conditions, and they also want the ease and flexibility of going from 24mm to 240mm in a split second. I was at the harbour of Rotterdam a few days ago, and that flexibility really helped me when I was taking photos of the industrial harbour and also ships out in the distance moving around. The image stabilization of the lens allowed me to get a lot of fast moving panning shots of vessels out on the water as well. Anyway, I hope that was some help to you in getting an idea of what the R8 and the 24-240 can offer. Let me know in the comments if I've missed anything, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.